Welcome, crew, to What Are Your Three, a Channel 3 podcast that had some audio issues with the first couple of minutes of this podcast. So I'm going to do a little bit of a mixed introduction here, and we will jump the conversation already in progress. I'm Dan. Ray is not on this episode anyway. This episode is being hosted with Sam Dyer, the person behind Bitmap Books. Been a great partner for Channel 3 so far. We've seen many a Bitmap books appear under a Christmas tree as a part of that partnership. Some great prizes have gone into the ticket counter during the time they have been with us here. I know we've had the Atari book go out there, the N64 book go out there. I've personally bought a copy of the NES compendium. Great piece of history there. There are a couple more that are on the docket here I'll talk about through the course of the episode. But to join our conversation already in progress, I apologize again. We are joining with Sam Dyer, the founder, the man behind Bitmap Books in England. And we begin with chatting about the founding of Bitmap Books and really around their first publication, which was a compendium of Commodore 64 artwork and information about the games of that particular unit there. Which was a part of Sam's early childhood. He actually was bequeathed the Commodore from his uncle, and he talks about how that artwork and that information got his attention. And we will go ahead and remind everybody, first of all, if you go to Bitmap Books, just at Bitmap Books on Channel 3, channel3.gg/bitmapbooks, c3.gg/bitmapbooks, all those things will take you to Bitmap Books' page, along with their links. Also, if you go right to c3.gg/bmb, that will cut you over directly to Bitmap Books as well. Of course, they have bitmapbooks.com, as well as being Bitmap Books on pretty much all of the other the inferior socials. Bitmap Books is out there. So again, joining our conversation with Sam Dyer, already in progress. Thank you for your understanding, and let's hear about the Commodore 64.
Channel 3 is the future.
And I always loved the art style of it anyway. I'm used to on when the games they used to come on cassettes in England, and the loading time could be like sort of 10-15 minutes, and a lot of the time you just have to watch these sort of like colored bars flickering while the game loaded up. But on the Commodore 64 you got like quite a neat sort of like loading screen. So for example, like on Batman, you'd have like this really cool I mean, like by today's standards it's obviously, you know, really primitive, but back then this amazing image of Batman and Joker, and I can remember thinking like, how the hell is that even possible that someone's actually drawn that with these sort of colored little rectangles? But yeah, it's just so nostalgic for me, and it was an easy one really. That's definitely the first system that I wanted to cover.
So to jump to most recently, I mean, you and I are talking right in the week of the release, but The Games of a Lifetime by Julian Jazz Rignall. Listen, how did this happen? Because you're talking about somebody who's got a lifetime of, starting with competition and writing in his teenage years, and you know, probably a more important autobiography than people realize in gaming history. But how did this one come about?
Well, it's actually interesting you say that, because everything's come a bit full circle, because Julian was actually featured in the Commodore 64 book. You know, he was someone that I like the rest of us. I used to buy gaming magazines as a kid.
Zap.
Yeah,
That was...
yeah. And Julian was very he had his mullet, and he just had a very sort of like iconic look about him.
It was the 80s, for context for everybody.
Yeah, it was the 80s and early 90s, but he started off in Zap, and he also did another magazine over here called Mean Machines, which actually I probably, because I would have been a little bit too young to get Zap. I remember Mean Machines because it had a great art style, and a guy called Gary Harrod used to do. He was the art director, and he used to do these really cool little like portraits of the people that were reviewing the games. So like on each review, it would have like a little picture of like Julian. For example, like if it was a soccer game, he'd be like dressed as like in like a soccer kit and stuff like that. And there are these really cute little illustrations. And I remember at school we used to draw them on our exercise books and stuff. And so it's like really weird that you sort of grow up as a kid reading Jazz's reviews and seeing pictures of him, and then sort of like 20 years later, you're designing a book and he's writing for it. So it's very, very sort of weird in that sense. And then sort of to come to the present day, we've obviously kept in touch with Jazz over the years, and he's written in lots of our books, done sort of reviews for us, and he's edited one book as well. And he approached me and said that he wanted to create his own book, and I was sort of a bit apprehensive because we don't tend to do sort of like autobiographical I could never say the word autobiographical books, just because that's not really our sort of style. But the more we spoke to Jazz, the more we realised that it kind of is talking about his life, but it's wrapped up in his favourite games and his career at the same time. So there's this really nice thread of his life that goes through the book, but actually, you know, the main thing that's been talked about are games. And I think it's a really, really unique way of doing that sort of book without it, because, you know, they can be a bit dry, can't they? Not quite text heavy, you know, sort of like those sort of like memoir sort of books. But I think the way we've approached it and stuff is, you know, quite unique. And yeah, as I said, launched on Monday, and it's early days, but the feedback's been really, really positive on that one. So that's great.
It's funny. I've known people who are like, I'm working on my memoirs. I'm like, what? Wait, what? You're working your memoirs? Like, you're just a normal Joe Schmo. It's just funny seeing, you know, Julian's history just from his teenage years, just being a competitive gamer, and like you said, just early magazines tied in, and just a lifetime. He's been involved in game design, editorial, writing. He's done everything. So it's very cool to see it interwoven with games through time and how those changes come about, and just kind of how that all ties together. It's a really, really fun way. I think the only other autobiography that's as interesting is Stan Lee did a comic book autobiography. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting way to do it. And the way that you have this woven in with kind of it's part autobiography, part signature Bitmap Books look. Is that fair to say? You've got, you know, a lot of the art and graphics and content that really make up your books. And I think it works in a way to stay on brand for you guys, but also catch a really great slice of gaming history.
Exactly. I mean, like Jazz, I mean, I think the thing that makes him stand out for me is that if you read a lot of gaming magazines nowadays, or even in like the 90s, a lot of not all of them, but some of the people writing about the games weren't actually gamers. And I think you can kind of tell that. And the thing about Julian is that, you know, he was the 1984 arcade champion. He's a hardcore gamer, and he loves games like they are his life. Hence the title of the book. And I think that really comes across in how he writes and his passion. And it's kind of like quite infectious when you read the book. There's some great stories in there about how he, you know, mastered different arcade games. And like you say, he actually developed games as well. He worked for Virgin in America. He was one of the early, he worked at IGN in the very, very early days, launching their online websites. So yeah, games really, really has been his life. And it's really, really fun thing to do, actually.
So you had a great 2024. I think you had, 4 books plus some special editions. You had the GBA Pixel book. You had a Tale of Two Halves, the history of football, or soccer for we treasonous across the pond, though I do say football because we have plenty of Canadian and European listeners here. Run and Gun, a guide to on-foot shooters, and the super popular, this was one I know ended up under a few Christmas trees, the N64 Visual Compendium. I know my normal co-host Ray, that was his first purchase was going right for the N64 book, and I know a few other people had that one had that one gifted to them. How do you decide, as you're planning out? Because I do want to talk about 2025. You've got some exciting ones coming up that I really interested in too, in particular, coming up still. But how do you decide when you're looking at this, and what started as, like you said, crowdfunding and going to the Commodore that your uncle bequeathed to you, to now you're planning, you're plotting out, you're trying to figure out what's going to be the what are you doing next?
I mean, the great thing about Bitmap Books is I've deliberately always kept it just me. I've not tried to be greedy and grow it really big. And the good thing about that is that I can be in control of which books we release.
No one's going to argue with you that way.
Exactly. And I know that's a good and a bad thing, but the way I've always approached it is I still think I'm target audience. I am the perfect target audience for our books because I'm bang into games. I'm the right age. And I always just think, is it the sort of thing that I would buy? And if it's a yes, then I probably think that it's, as long as there's obviously like a big enough market, like it's not too much of a niche system or something, then it generally gets the go ahead. But it's really a combination of projects that I'm interested in doing, and also projects that we get approached. So like an author might get in touch and say, like Richard Moss with the football book said, hey, I've had this idea for a book on football games. Do you fancy collaborating and publishing it? So sort of two sort of distinct ways that projects come to us and happen.
So you've got a few coming up, Brett, for the rest of the year. If I have this correct, You've Hurt Me Plenty, the ultimate guide to first-person shooters for the 2003 to 2010 era.
Yes, that's correct. So this is the follow-up to I'm Too Young to Die, which came out a couple of years ago.
Great titles, by the way. Great titles for this.
And for those who don't know, those are the difficulty settings on Doom. When you boot Doom up with that sort of that blood-dripping typeface, those are the different sort of difficulty settings on those. But yeah, the Hurt Me Plenty is a follow-up to I'm Too Young to Die, and quite simply, it's just sort of covering the sort of 7 years after the first book. So it's really sort of the Call of Duty era from 2003.
Yes, it's a wild change in games during that time. You're going from the PlayStation 2 era to the 3, and the sunsetting of that, almost getting ready for the 4, like that whole, and then the PC era is an entire other monster. Yeah. There's a lot that happens in there.
Yeah, and obviously, it's very sort of a lot of the games are sort of in that era have been 3D. There are some in there that are still have like a pixel, more old school aesthetic, but on the whole, the games are more modern. So it's an interesting book for us because obviously we've tended to do stuff that's quite retro, if you like, and some people would argue that some of the games in this book aren't necessarily that retro to some people. Well, it depends what you classify retro as, but
I don't want to have that conversation. There's times where I'm talking to people in their 40s, and there's times where I'm talking to people in their 20s, and those are very different levels of pain. Those are different doom settings for me on having those conversations. Someone called the PS2 retro the other day, and I wanted to die, so I was ready to dig my own grave at that point.
So that's that book, and that's coming out in May. That one.
And you've got 50 indie games that changed the world on the docket for this year.
Yes, this is a really, really interesting book. Again, an area that we've never really explored before, but we were approached by an author called Aaron Potter, who has written for many sort of gaming magazines here in the UK, but he's got a real love for indie games. So his concept was taking 50 indie games that have like groundbreaking indie games that have done something really, really amazing, were really original, and talking about why they were so great. And for each indie game, we've interviewed one of the original developers where possible. But every single indie game has an interview with someone involved in the game. And also, obviously, it wouldn't be a Bitmap book without lots of screenshots. And we've also managed to source concept art for pretty much all of the 50 games as well. So, you'll get a real opportunity to hear about how it was made, and then also see some of the sort of behind the scenes conceptual stuff that sort of went into making it. So that one at the moment is due to be released in the summer, and it's currently with the proofreader. But yeah, really happy with it. And again, like I said, it's something a bit different, and that's what I enjoy doing, really, Dan, is just sort of not just doing the same thing all the time. I like to try different things and, stretch myself and keep on sort of adding to our range of books, like different sort of subjects, which I think is really important.
How far back does that one go? I mean, you could go Doom or earlier. Like, how far of a span? I can't imagine trying to pick 50. Like, how far back are you going with this?
Yeah, I know. I think it's going to be quite a contentious book because
that's the fun part, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, you say fun. We get quite a lot. I
don't get the hate mail, so I guess it's fun for me. Sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's hate mail, but we get obviously a lot of our books are collections of games. So I mean, we've never done a book that pretends that claims that every single game for that system is released in it. And there's always someone who is upset because their favorite game isn't included. But
you missed this obscure game. How could you miss it? Yeah, you get that nonsense in there.
Yeah, but it's really, really hard, obviously, to please everyone. So we just have to do what we think's right. I mean, the earliest it goes, I mean, the book really starts, it doesn't go that far back. It's really sort of like Minecraft. It's like the sort of the start of that, and then the indie games are really from there right up to sort of like the last couple of years. So
there'll be some great ones in there. Then that's exciting.
Yeah. Oh, there's some amazing games in there. Like there's some obvious ones in there, like like Cuphead. But there's also some sort of more ones that are sort of lesser known in there as well. I don't want to say too much because
no. Yeah, I'm not going to ask anymore. I'm not going to.
No, it's fine. But I mean, if anybody is
itself.
If anybody is interested in finding out more about any of the books that I'm talking about, you can check out our website, which is bitmapbooks.com, or we do have on the website. There's like a newsletter link at the bottom. So if you sort of sign up for that, you can be kept up to date with all the sort of latest developments on the books we're talking about.
I'm just going to shout out the guaranteed pre-order for me that once it drops the definitive guide to SNES RPGs Volume 1, because I'm waiting for the alert to come in that the JRPG book is back in stock, and that will be on its way to join its brethren that have. But the SNES RPGs, you hit me directly in the soul. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know this has been my life for the last sort of probably 3 or 4 months, this book. So we were approached by an author called Moses Norton, who had this idea to create this massive book which basically covers SNES RPGs. It's actually so big that it's going to be split over to 2 volumes. Both volumes are nearly 600 pages. That it's an absolute beast of a book, and it's just packed full of screenshots, illustrations, some really great writing. So it's got a really nice balance of writing, of text and imagery. But that's been so great to put together. He's done really great looks at games like ActRaiser and Chrono Trigger and all those sorts of games that people love. So
the peak of Squaresoft, yes.
yeah, and there's as I said, it sort of goes up sort of half the alphabet in the first volume and the second half in the second volume. But I'm really, really excited to launch this one probably around about October this year. As you mentioned,
honey, that's my birthday. Just letting my wife know now. That's good. That gives me a really good excuse to get that one. Then I don't have to worry about it. Good.
As you mentioned earlier, we've done a JRPG book before, which we released a few years ago, which has been insanely popular and continues to be really, really popular. So I'm hoping that this sort of follows on with that, because the games just look so amazing, as we all know. These old RPGs.
We're still chasing those highs 30 years later, and even
Yeah.
Sea of Stars is one of my favorite the last few years, and like, no, they opened the playbook you're putting together in that book and then just ran it back for Sea of Stars. So,
Well, yeah,
it makes
actually,
sense.
Sea of Stars is in the indie games. That's actually my favorite entry in the indie games book, Sea of Stars, just because the pixel art in it is just absolutely gorgeous.
We we
Beautiful.
do a screenshot contest every week. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I can't tell you. Sea of Stars is won too many times because of how beautiful the artwork is. Like, it doesn't. You can bring me whatever, the 5,000 series graphics cards on the PCs are going to do, or the PS5s and the Xbox Ones. But you give me some of those shots in Sea of Stars, they will take it down every time with 16-bitish graphics.
Have you got the Sea of Stars released a really nice art book recently?
I haven't. I saw it. Now you're tempting me.
Yeah. So the artist is called Bryce. I can't say his surname. Bryce Kayo. But his artwork is absolutely beautiful, as well as concept work for Sea of Stars, and we've got some of that in the book as well. So, yeah, yes, great.
Yeah, I'm all right. I mean, I was already ready for the indie book too, but now I'm definitely in. So, hey, I have to ask you, what's been your, not that they aren't all your baby to some degree. What's your personal favorite of the bunch, like of the last, 11 years? What's the one that's your baby, you're proudest of?
Probably it's hard because you're asking me. It's like trying to say.
I know. I had to ask it though. I'm sorry.
I'd probably say the Metal Slug book for a variety of reasons. But the first being that that was directly working with SNK in Japan. We'd already done the Neo Geo book, so we had a good relationship. But I think for a company like that to trust a foreign company like Bitmap with one of their key IPs to produce an art book was a massive compliment to us. And looking back, there was quite a lot of pressure as well, but kind of like in a good way. I just wanted to make the best book possible and do them proud. But I think looking back, I'm really proud of how it turned out and the design of it and the amount of information there's in there. And we managed to challenge ourselves and them to dig deeper into the history, and all the developer interviews we managed to get with the original Japanese developers was a challenge. But yeah, I just think the whole thing of that, I look back and I'm incredibly proud of it. But to be honest, I'm proud of all the books, but that one probably stands out as been like the most complete, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a little detour because I always love talking with folks about 3 games of their choosing. And you picked 3 that I think will tie directly back into the business for you as well. First of all, you picked Sensible Soccer, a game that was a lot of places, but I think I'm guessing we're talking about PC and Amiga type versions of this from back in 1992.
Yeah, so my memories of this are on the Amiga. So I'm not quite sure what you guys had in America, but in the UK, when we had gaming magazines, and you'd get cover discs, like floppy discs on the front with demos on. And we had one magazine over here called Amiga Format. Or was it called Amiga Power? I can't remember which one it was. But
there
anyway,
was an Amiga Power. I only remember that because of, 1, the AP cracks me up, and 2, just like I just call it Power. We'll just go. Everybody's just going with Power. It's like everybody calling everything Plus now. It was Amiga Power. So yeah.
And it had this demo on it of Sensible Soccer, and it was literally just 2 teams. It was Norwich versus Manchester United, and it was just you could play one 90-minute match. And I just remember, I mean, if I close my eyes now, I can see myself there playing it. It's unbelievable, really, what sort of strong memories I have of this little. For those who don't know, it's if you've never played it before, it's a vertical football game, and the sprites are very, very small. I don't know the exact ratio of dots, but very, very sort of low res, but incredibly arcadey, very fast, but very, very playable and great fun. You could score some really fun goals, and you because it was the Amiga, you use a joystick. So it's a lot easier than using like a joypad. And you could put bend on when you shot, you could put like curve on the ball, and you could do like slide tackles and all sorts. It was just a perfect. It was just arcadey is the best sort of way to describe it. You didn't have too much knowledge. You could just jump straight in and play it. But over
Football will
time,
never get better than this, and that was you have to think of those times, right?
and then after that, a few years later, they released a game called Sensible World of Soccer, and this is where it took it to a whole new level of like unbelievableness. So they added like a management aspect to it as well. So you could be, I don't know, like Chelsea or Manchester United, and you could actually buy players, sell players, try and win the league, and you could scout players from all over the world, and it had the real names and statistics for all the players and stuff. It was just a unbelievable game, and it's the one I still play. It's the one I still sort of crave to play nowadays, just which I think is testament to how timeless the gameplay is. Just it still plays really great today.
What is it about football soccer that makes the management sims so popular and entertaining? I mean, they tried to do it with American football once, and it died rapidly. But there have been like football managers for years and iterations every year. Like Sega still produces them every year. What is it about football that makes the management sims so entertaining for people?
I think it's just, I don't know. I'm just guessing. It's probably just the fact that you're in charge, I guess. You can buy Messi or Ronaldo and put them into your team, and you have the power to sort of do that. And I don't know. I mean, as you say, they are hugely, hugely popular. I think they're also quite sort of slow games, aren't they? They're quite relaxed. I think some people find that sort of thing quite relaxing, that you can just sort of go into it, and it's not stressful, and you can really put lots of time into it and see like a reward for all the work you put in, I guess.
Get to live the dream that way.
Yes.
Your second game you brought up here, which again, I think will tie easily in, The Secret of Monkey Island, and playing as Guybrush Threepwood, a name that you can't say 3 times fast. I know I can't. But even the characters in the game, though, if I remember correctly, can't say his name at different points.
Yeah, I don't know where to start with this game. Massive for me. So I had this on the Amiga, and I think it came on about 7 floppy disks, maybe more, and it was a complete pain.
For people like my children, that's the save icon. Not even. It was the floppy disk. It was the 5.5s. I don't even know how to describe them to my kids. Forget it. Just I'm gonna roll over my grave again. But yeah,
they're like they're the 3.5-inch discs, like the plastic discs with the little metal shutter over the top. I think it was probably mainly European that we had them.
The three. Well, we call them 3. We went by inches. Sorry, I'm sitting here. I'm not dealing with metric. I'm dealing with imperial. Sorry.
And so you had to do a lot of disk swapping. So if you sort of moved into a different area of the game, it would say insert disk 5, and you'd have to swap out disks, and it would start crunching and loading. So eventually I managed to get like an extra disk drive, which sort of helped a little bit, so you could have 2 disks in at the same time. But for those who don't know, it's The Secret of Monkey Island's like a point and click adventure game. And you play a pirate called Guybrush Threepwood, like you say, and you're on this like massive adventure, and it's you have to use the mouse to click basically around an environment, and then you have to sort of like talk to people. You have to look for items and then use those items to solve puzzles. But the whole thing was wrapped up in this amazing story, and it was really funny, like you touched on, and it was just so captivating. And it took just hours and hours and hours playing that game when I should have been outside, probably in the sun playing, but I chose to be inside trying to solve that game. And obviously it's before the internet, so you couldn't cheat. It was really hard to work out what to do, and some rooms would take some puzzles would take like days and days of just like trying everything, talking to everyone. Don't know if I have the patience nowadays, but back then, yeah, it was just such a, it's just one of those games you couldn't put down, and you wanted to sort of see it through.
It was like the beginning of LucasArts really, and their games division really taking off. I mean, like they had been around and they did like like a Last Crusade game. They did some other odds and ends through the 80s, but like this started like, oh, they found their lane too in these like point and clicks and the animation and the humor. Like they kind of found their lane with this.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously Sierra were doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah, they were the name for that. Yeah.
But I think the Sierra games, although they are beautiful, they didn't have the humor and they took themselves quite seriously. Like there was deaths and things like that. Whereas in the LucasArts games or the early ones, you couldn't die, and there was lots of jokes, and it felt like the guys who wrote it were just having lots of fun, and there was lots of humor. So I think that's kind of like what you said. It's kind of sort of set them apart from everyone else.
Did this inspire anything in the point and click book for Bitmap? I figured there was a direct tie-in here, or this was one you were probably excited to get to.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is it's probably my favorite genre of game. So it's a book I always wanted to do. I always wanted to do a book on point and click adventure games, and when I had the sort of time to start looking at it, I just sort of indulged myself really and just created the book. I mean, I think I started out saying I wanted 10 interviews with developers of the games, and we ended up with over 50. So it grew and it grew and it grew. And yeah, I suppose I am really proud of that book. Actually, that's probably a good, very close second place to the favorite book question, I think.
All right, and then your third game, Cannon Fodder. I assume we're going back to the Amiga, though this was again another game that was on every system for years at that point in time. A little strategy and planning here.
Yeah, but I think it's best on the Amiga because it's another mouse game.
Yeah, you need the mouse for this. You can't.
Yeah.
You need to move the cursor. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, it uses the same sprites as Sensible Soccer because it's made by the same company. They had that sort of like aesthetic.
John here, same developer, same guy with Sensible.
Yeah, exactly. So you're it's set in the Vietnam War, and you control a team of soldiers, and you click around the screen with the left button where you want to move, and then you hit the right button on the mouse to shoot. And it starts off really simple, like there's a couple of baddies you've got to shoot, and then as you go through, it actually gets quite strategic. Like you've got to think of strategies to complete the different missions, and then you get to drive tanks and helicopters towards the end and stuff. But yeah, I just think it was just one of those games that I think it's kind of like my sort of favorite sorts of games where there's sort of like a strategy element to them, but there's action as well. I've never been a massive fan of just pure action. I've always liked that sort of extra level in a game that makes you think. And yeah, Cannon Fodder is. I think I got it for Christmas one year, and it had a really great intro to it, and an actual song at the start that actually came out from your computer with actual lyrics, and I can remember being quite blown away at the time. Obviously, this is 1992 or 3, so
unheard of at that time. Yes.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the games my dad used to play with me as well. Very occasionally, he'd get involved in what I was doing, and I think he quite liked Cannon Fodder as well. So it's always had a bit of a special sort of. I've always thought of it quite fondly because of that.
I just want to ask you one question, unrelated to anything. We ask every day on the site some kind of quest or question. What's the first game you remember beating all the way through?
All the way through. I don't actually think I've ever completed that many games. It would actually probably be Super Metroid.
Wow, that takes some effort too with the back and forth, but nice.
Yeah, it was when my daughter was was really young and I had lots of sort of, when she was sleeping and stuff, I used to play it. I think I definitely completed that. I don't tend to, although I do like strategy games, I tend to not have enough patience to really, really, really complete it.
You will not be seeing Sam going into Civilization 7 this week.
No. Although I probably like the game, I probably love the game. I just wouldn't have the patience to sort of really,
waiting
get
for the
that
turns in that can be painful. Yeah.
Yeah, to actually see it through and finish it. Yeah, so probably, I mean, I might have finished some games on the Commodore 64, but yeah, I don't think I've ever been. I'm not like an amazing gamer. I've more enthusiasm than skill, I think.
Just have fun. It just doesn't matter. Just as long as you have fun, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, I want to thank you again. Remind everybody, bitmapbooks.com. Again, just released The Games of a Lifetime by Julie and Jazz Rignall. That'll be out there for everybody to take a look at. Some books from last year that are out there. The GBA Pixel book, as my Game Boy Advance is sitting next to me. You think I could remember that? A Tale of Two Halves: The History of Football. Run and Gun: A Guide to On-Foot Shooters, and the super popular N64 Visual Compendium. And then keep an eye out for those books we talked about coming the rest of this year. The Hurt Me Plenty, the next piece of the first-person shooters there, 50 indie games that changed the world, and the definitive guide to SNES RPG. Sorry, you said SNES, and my partner Ray will be so happy to hear that and just enjoy me having to go through that. But I will say the SNES RPGs Volume 1, which again, that will be perfect timing, as that will be opening. Oh my God, who got this for me for my birthday? Just me, I guess I did. So that's fine. But Sam, thank you so much for everything. We really appreciate it. It was fun having this conversation with you. Anything else you wanted to get out there for anybody? Any other books with the reprints coming up or anything you want to call out?
Yeah, just really quickly. So in May, with the release of Hurt Me Plenty, we've also got a few books that are reprinting at the moment. So if you do go onto the website and you think, oh, I really want that book, but it's not in stock, we've got some extra stock of books like the Game Boy Box Art Collection, Atari 2600 Visual Compendium, A Guide to Japanese Role-Playing Games, and I'm Too Young to Die, and a couple of SNES books. So we're just trying to replenish some stock. So yeah, as I said, they'll be in May.
Yep, that JRPG book. I'm just waiting for that email to hit my mailboxes back, and it'll be on its way. It'll join its NES brother that I've got next to me too. So
nice.
I appreciate it. Now let's land this plane. Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on all the major platforms, whether it's Spotify, our main home, YouTube Music, Apple, anywhere else. c3.gg/podcast will take you right there. I'm Dan. Ray is normally here. Executive producer Joel Willis. And finally, our theme song is provided by the one and only Caster Garden, who, if you go to c3.gg/Caster Garden, you'll find him. And if you go to c3.gg/Caster Garden Music, you will find all of his music as well. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Channel 3 is the future.